And here we go. Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome, the off-season edition. Hey, we're that much closer to the beginning of training camp. The Saints actually announced how many practices are going to be open to the public, and the training camp schedule. They will start showing up, the 28th, I believe?
29th.
Well, I think they report the 28th. I think the rookies report first and the veterans.
Yeah, but camp starts the 29th.
Yeah. And the first practice, I believe, is that Monday or Tuesday, because it's 3 days after camp starts, you can have your first serious padded practice. I'm your host tonight, Alan Ulrich, here with my partner in crime, Sean Williams. How's it going tonight, Sean?
Awesome, buddy. Awesome. We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We want to thank also our sponsors, Fan First Productions, for seeing in their infinite wisdom to bring us to you. And we thank you all for joining us. And we want to invite you to subscribe to our show on iTunes, on YouTube. Come by Facebook, drop us a line on our Facebook page, Under the Dome Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome PO1. I think that paid all the bills.
I think so.
Yeah, well, it's the off season, so rather than follow ESPN for the moves that teams are making, you can just turn on your local police scanner and see which players are not going to be available come opening day. And such is the case for a former Saint, and it pains me to no end to refer to this man as a former Saint, but he is nonetheless. We found out yesterday that the one and only Brandon Browner, as Sean Fox calls him, Brandon Doo-Doo Browner, has been arrested and charged with everything just this side of the Lindbergh kidnapping case. But I think the official charge as of this afternoon was attempted murder. And because of his record going back to, I want to say October of last year with a drug arrest, and then there was another one I want to say in the spring, but I can't remember precisely what that arrest was for. But he faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. And it has absolutely nothing to do with all the money that he stole from the New Orleans Saints either.
I just can't believe you just referenced the Lindbergh kidnapping. You're going to have people Googling that right now. Who the hell is Lindbergh?
Hey, we are nothing if not historical.
My God. Yeah. Every time I see these kind of stories, and like I was saying off the air, this sounds, based on hearing some of the facts so far, this sounds like an ex-girlfriend. And, I think he claims he had a $20,000 Rolex watch there he broke in to get because he wasn't going to let her keep his watch and that whole bit. It reminds me of going way back to an Atlanta Falcons story. Do you remember when Andre Rison was dating that rap star
Left
Eye Lopes, and she set his place on fire? She burned his house down.
I ain't touching that.
I'm just telling you, hey, what I told you on the air. Crazy might be good in bed, but after you finish, you got to deal with that. And that's what crazy does. Crazy burns your house down. Crazy cooks a rabbit on the stove. Crazy throws battery acid all over your BMW. You don't mess with crazy. So, I'm not
crazy
saying...
Crazy steals your Rolex.
Yeah, crazy steals your Rolex. Crazy post pictures on Instagram saying you got beat. You beat them. Crazy.
Yep.
It's like Chris Rock's story. Never get in a car with a mad woman because you're going to get your ass kicked by the police. You know? So, anyway.
You know, it's enjoyable to go back and watch our shows after the fact because I can sit there and I can go, yep, that right there, that was the point. That's where it took a nosedive, right?
Yeah. Hey, I'm just saying. Because listen, in all seriousness, you gotta, if you can't laugh at the police blotter, you know, of course, abusing women is not funny. You know, none of this is funny. But the point is, I kind of end up looking at these things with a cynical viewpoint because I'm like, you know, Brandon Brown, you're a piece of garbage when you came here. You acted like a piece of garbage. So it's only fitting that you got hooked up with garbage and now garbage is getting thrown in your face. You know, you can't go around kicking in women's doors and things like that. And you think just because you think they got your stuff. You're not OJ, although OJ went to jail for that.
Man, I've already fielded an OJ question today, and I got someone asked if they thought OJ Simpson was a top 5 running back, and I simply pointed out factually. I mean, you got to look at the reality of it. I said he had a way of cutting through the competition, and they really took a dim view of that. And I said, why are you getting so mad? He sliced through the opposition like nobody before him.
Oh, God. Oh, God. All right. Hang on.
Never play with the piranha.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, all you need to know about Brandon Browner, in my opinion, all that you need to know about this guy is his press release after he was released by the Saints, saying making reference to how he took their money and ran. That he never played again. Never played for another team.
Look, and if you want to know what kind of person Brandon Browner is, honestly, just go back and look at that Washington Redskins game where he has an opportunity to make the tackle and he goes after another player because just like this case we're seeing right here, you know, something happened off the field or something we didn't know about happened on the field, and he went and exacted revenge rather than play the game and do his job.
Yeah.
It's that simple. You know, that summarizes Brandon Browner, at least as far as his Saints career. How he was with Seattle and how he was with New England, that's a totally different affair. I honestly didn't pay much attention to him with those teams. I'm just talking about when he was with us. I mean, that play symbolized the kind of person that revealed the kind of person Brandon Browner was. Because
it was, to quote, and this is another thing that'll probably have a lot of our younger audience Googling. To quote Howard Cosell, he was very truculent with the media in New Orleans, and he was brought in to be a leader because of his experience.
They made him captain.
Yeah.
You know, and I know some people are asking about that. You know, how could you make a guy like that captain? You know, and Junior Galette, I think, was captain in 2014 too. And part of it, to me, and you have to go back, because I'm a Joe Namath fan. Okay, I'll proudly admit that I like Joe Namath. Okay, if you watch America's Game on the '68 Jets, they talk about how Joe Namath was irresponsible. Joe Namath would come into the huddle, you know, come into games from going out drinking all night. Don't get nervous.
The Superdome fell.
But he was, you know, very immature and irresponsible. Now, he did play. But, I mean, they could smell the alcohol on him and things that, you know, of course, it's a different era back then. But they talk about making Joe Namath captain. And they made him captain to get him to start accepting responsibility for how the team was going to play. Okay? They wanted to force maturity on Joe Namath. It worked for Namath. Namath became a better quarterback in 68 than he was in 67 and 66. Even though he was throwing for over 4,000 yards, he became a better quarterback, which is how the Jets won the Super Bowl. With Gillette and with people like Browner, making them captains didn't make them mature, didn't make them become more responsible. It made them even more, I guess I could say this, assholishness, and more of an asshole. Okay. When you get Gillette firing his mouth off and trashing old Saints players and stuff and talking about how much better he is than they are or they were, and Brandon Browner doing what he was doing, they weren't taking ownership of the team. They weren't taking responsibility for the team. They weren't taking control of the team from the standpoint of, okay, guys, this is what we have to do to win. Especially someone like Browner, who had been to 2 Super Bowls, had been in championship games.
2 years before coming here, he had 2 Super Bowl rings.
Yeah, exactly. You think he would be able to show the young players on the team how to be a leader, how to be mature, and he wasn't. He was the exact opposite. It's like putting the class bully as your class president, or the guy that the whole school hates as the class president, and he acts like the reason why, I should say, the school hates him in the first place. That's what it was like when you made those kind of guys captains. And I think they learned that lesson. I think that the team learned that lesson. That's why you're seeing a Cam Jordan as a captain. And I remember Drew Brees in 2015 talking about that, the lack of leadership on the team. And that was part of the problem why those teams went 7-9, even though on paper, well, he believes, because he's the eternal optimist, but on paper, those teams were talented enough to do better than 7-9. So that's my take on that.
Yeah. Brandon Browner was an idiot when he came to New Orleans. He was an idiot while he was at New Orleans. He was an idiot when he left New Orleans. And you made reference to Browner and Gillette, and I think, as much as I hate to say this, it's just a sign of this millennial mindset. It's not about the team; it's about what you can get out of it for yourself.
Yeah, I'm not going to blast the whole millennial group. I think they've got enough problems on their own, and these guys are actually older. But it's more of a case of an entitlement. You're right, an entitlement mentality. It's a case of it's all about me. The narcissist, almost a narcissistic person. It's like it's got to be about me. It's not about the group. Yeah. Like if you think about Drew Brees, for example, when Drew Brees won or broke Dan Marino's record, you've seen that film footage in the locker room, and he talks about how it's an award that goes to him, or a record that he has accomplished, but it's really more about, he said, about the team, because he said, it's about you making that block that allowed that big pass. It's you catching that big pass, or you taking a little pass and taking it the distance for a score. That's how a leader talks. Okay, he tries to include as many people as possible into it. Whereas you've got to, when you start talking about self-centered, narcissistic people, people are toilet paper. They're just to be used and thrown away. You're not including them. It's who you stepped on to get to your greatness, and that's the problem with people like a Junior Gillette and a Brandon Browner, and of course they never take responsibility for their actions. It's always somebody else.
Well, they don't have to.
It's somebody getting in trouble.
As soon as they get off the hook with New Orleans, they move on to someone else. in Browner's case, as soon as he gets off the hook with New England, or excuse me, with Seattle, he moves on to New England, plays in another Super Bowl, which gives him that much more of a sense of entitlement. He moves on to the next team. It's all about what he's doing to improve his situation. And without going into any detail, I can say the same thing about LeBron James. Anyway, this is a football show, so I'm not going to make that vein in my forehead stand up talking about LeBron.
Get my daughter on this show. You can talk about LeBron with her. She loves LeBron.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Yes, I am. She can't stand him.
Oh, I was about to say.
She's Steph Curry all the way. She's Steph Curry. She despises LeBron James. Yeah, she. It's actually amusing to watch a basketball game with her. So, yeah, she is not a LeBron James fan at all.
Neither am I.
So, okay. All right. So the Saints announced a training camp schedule. 10 practices open to the public. They did not say whether or not they will sell. They can't sell them, but they will give away tickets. So I imagine it's going to be first come, first serve. And, the challenge, of course, for people is weather permitting. If it rains or they cancel practice because it's too hot and move it into the indoor facility, you have no warning. That's just going to be up to the team to do that. And if it gets moved to the inside facility, that's not open to the public because there simply isn't the room inside of it for people to sit and watch practice, which is a shame because those are the practices I go see.
Yeah.
I'm way past the standing out there in the heat watching guys play.
Even Drew Brees. I mean, there's a limit to, when the sweat starts rolling down the brow. The sweat starts rolling off my 50-year-old eyebrows. There's got to be something better than that.
Yeah, there was a time years ago I would love to sit out there and watch, and I didn't care what the heat just didn't bother me. But the idea of sitting out with no shade on metal bleachers in 90-something degree weather, the sun beating on me in the morning, and I'm squished in with a bunch of people. Yeah, I ain't doing that. I don't care what it. They could be giving money away to these people, and I'm like, how much money? Yeah, I ain't doing that. That's just how I am. It's not my thing anymore.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Mm-hmm. We had as we've been doing with our new segment called Saints in Time, which I'm naming as of now, I suppose. We kind of delved back into the history of the team and the franchise, to some of the best moments, the worst moments, the most outstanding memories. We've been doing that in this dead time a little bit. Excuse me. Based a lot on what our viewers have asked us. I had a question posed to me a couple of days ago asking me, what was the lowest point in Saints history to you? And I thought about that, and I'm initially I was like, oh my God, you could write a volume on the lowest.
Oh yeah.
But to me, and I'm not one of these bandwagon people that have been around since Drew Brees joined the team. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I've been a fan all of my life, basically. But I can honestly say that in my mind, the absolute lowest point that I've seen this franchise was in the 2015 season when we lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, and we were heavily favored to win that game and jumped out to a lead, I believe, and then it just went toilet bowl madness. And shortly thereafter was the Washington Redskins game. So I'm going to say that the time frame between okay, if memory serves me correctly, that Philadelphia game was just a few games into that 2015 season, like maybe the first 4 or 5.
Yeah, we just beat Dallas the week before in overtime for
Yeah.
CJ Spiller's
And that
one
was our
highlight.
first win of that season.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we had started this season 0-3, and expectations were that, okay, you know, you beat Dallas at home in overtime on a sensational 80-yard touchdown by CJ Spiller. So things have finally clicked and it's going to turn around. And then you go to Philadelphia and cataclysmic results ensue. And then I right off the top of my head, I can't remember correct, but a few weeks later, you go up against the Washington Redskins in Washington, again, favored to win the game, and just get absolutely blasted. Which, to kind of tie this all together, that was the game where Brandon Browner, that Alan made reference to earlier, where he went after the offensive lineman over there when the play was already 30 yards down the field over there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just, as a Saints fan, at that point in time, I was covering the team for Pro Football Spot. And I didn't get into, as a writer, I never tried to put myself in a position where I was going to say, well, this player needs to be traded and this coach needs to be. I never tried to do that. I tried to pull the positive or find some positive in everything. And after that Redskins game, I tried to put my twist and my spin on it. And when I wrote the post game article, I turned it in and I was like, I don't see any hope of this changing before next season.
Yeah, you know, that was the season, a lot like the 2008 season, where you start off 1-3. We lose to Philadelphia. Then we went on a 3-game winning streak. So we were 4-4 after that 3-game winning streak, because I think we beat the Falcons, the Colts. That was the Ben Watson fake field goal, you know, big touchdown there. And I think we beat somebody else. I think it was Tampa or someone like that. Anyway, so you got the 4-4 going into the Redskins game. So you battle. So now at 500. So here's going to be the first week you can get over 500. And they lose to the Redskins. And you lose badly because, you know, the Philadelphia game and the Washington game, the Philadelphia game, the offensive line just fell apart. All of a sudden, we can't block to protect Drew Brees. We're just getting our butts handed to us on the offensive line. I think it was Tim Lolito's worst game as a Saint was in that game. And then, you know, against Washington, it was horrible. It was all bad. You couldn't move the ball on offense, and on defense, you can't stop them. So the following week, I think, was when we played Tennessee. And that was like the Philadelphia game. You start off, you're kicking their ass early, and then Delaney Walker gets that one big play off of a tip ball that should have been intercepted. I think Jarius Byrd might have been the one that tipped it. Right into Walker's hand, and then he runs in for a touchdown. And all of a sudden, it's like, here we go again. The whole thing explodes, and then we're just getting steamrolled by Tennessee, who had nothing. And you're like, what is going on here? How are you making these guys look like Pro Bowlers? You know, and yeah, that was what was frustrating about that 2015 team. Is, you know, you think you got, okay, we're going to finally turn the corner. We're starting to gel. We're playing better. They seem to, you know, get along and do all the things it takes to, you know, become a good team. And then they lay some, I don't even call it an egg. It was more like a turd, you know, in the middle of the field. But it was. I mean, you know, you say lose, you know, you want to say, you know, they laid an egg. They didn't lay an egg. No, that's what you had. You had to sit and watch that for 3 hours.
People say that. I mean, they throw at me that it was much lower when the teams would go 1-15, and
That was
you
only
know,
one team that did that. Yeah.
you know, I can get where you're coming from, and I can allow you that, but with those 3 consecutive 7-9 seasons under Sean Payton, it was different because you had the players to be a better team.
I'd say in 2016 you did. 2015, not so much. 2014, no, there was too much going on behind the scenes. But 2016, you were better than a 7-9 team. You might have been an 8-8, 9-7 team, but you were better than what you did. You lost a couple of games you shouldn't have lost in 2016. I'm one of these guys that's old enough to have witnessed more Saints games than family funerals, but
That's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
For a long time there.
I started my first game I went to, I think, was in 73, 74, 73. My dad took me to a game at Old Tulane Stadium, and I was more interested in the fact that we were right up against the back wall, and you could stand on the bleacher, put your hands on the back wall, look over the edge, and it's a straight drop down to the ground. There's no fence. There's nothing. If you want to be crazy, you could sit on that thing, sit on that ledge right there, and no one's gonna stop you. I don't know why you would do it, but you could have, because they had nothing. But they had nothing up there. So that's the kind of stuff I was looking at. And, I wanted the popcorn, I wanted all this stuff, and I'm looking around the stadium more than looking at the game because I just don't know what's going on in a game. So anyway, the first games I can really remember were in 76 and 77. That's when I understood understood what football was, understood what the offense was, the defense was, what the object of the game was. I knew what I was looking at. I knew players' names, that kind of stuff. So I was about, 9, 10 years old at this point. All right. So one of my lowest points is losing to Tampa Bay in 1977, the 0-26 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We lose that. That was a low point, because you feel like, how can you lose to a team like this? Then fast forward, a couple of years, 1980, we lose to the Miami Dolphins in the Orange Bowl. Actually, I rewatched this game about 6 or 8 months ago. It's got pulled off of YouTube by the friggin' NFL Nazis. But it always makes me mad. I'm sorry, this is a side rant. Who the hell cares if you're watching a game from 30 years ago, the Miami Dolphins versus the New Orleans Saints from 1980? Who the hell cares? Who's pirate? Why does the NFL care? They're not going to they're not going to sell this game. Even Dolphin fans hate this game. So stick it on YouTube. Let nostalgic morons like myself go watch this thing and put myself through this again and wonder how this went wrong. Don't yank this thing off. Just let it go. After so many, I can understand a game from last year or a game from last week. You're going to pull those because you're going to probably market those things for something else. But a 30 or 40-year-old game, most people aren't even watching it. I'm enjoying watching the commercials even, because it's reminding me of when I was a kid, the Prestone commercial and the AC Auto, AC Delco commercials, and that kind of stuff. The stuff that used to sponsor the NFL way back when. So anyway, that game, the Dolphins game, Saints-Dolphins, Week 4, Chuck Muncie's suspended, and they trade into the Chargers the following week. But they lose this game because of a bad call They call Ike Harris for offensive pass interference when he caught the game-winning touchdown with no time left. So the Saints get that touchdown taken away. They lose to the Dolphins in that game. They trade Chuck Muncie, and my dad takes me to the Saints-Cardinals game, which was the following week, week 5. 40-6 was the score in this game. It was the worst game I have ever seen as a Saints fan. 6 yards rushing. That was the total. 6 yards rushing.
Was that during Jim Hart's days?
Yeah. Jim Hart was still there. Yeah, because Neil Lomax comes in the early 80s. So Jim Hart is still there. And the Cardinals stunk. It wasn't like this was not Don Coryell's Cardinals. This was some coach you'll probably never remember. Only a Cardinals fan knows who it is. But, this was just a horrible game. I mean, they had no emotion. They didn't care. People were cheering. They're booing Archie coming on the big screens. They used to hang from the gondola. Archie Man would come on to advertise Royal Oldsmobile. And they're booing that. They're booing the commercial. They're booing Ruth's Chris Steakhouse commercials. They're booing everything. The only thing they were cheering were paper airplanes to see if they would make it to the field. And as it got closer to the field, the crowd noise get louder and louder. Like some big play's happening. And if it landed on the field, it was like a standing ovation. All 30,000 of us, because that's about how many people left in the game. I mean, you could shoot deer in the stands. It was horrible. And my dad, halftime, I'm like, Dad, can we go? Can we go? This is horrible. Can we go? And it's like, no, we're staying to the end. Oh, my God. Because
we used to be season ticket hotel, and my nephews I'd love to go see a college game, and I'd take them, and we'd get there about an hour and a half early and walk to the stadium from the remote parking lot that we had to utilize, and along about it. The teams that played Louisiana Tech at home at that point in time weren't so much of a challenge. And when this game in particular, I think it was homecoming versus North Texas, and Kenneth Dixon had 6 touchdowns in that game. I think it was like 52-7, something to that extent. And right after halftime, he said, my nephew was with me. He said, can we go? I said, I looked at the scoreboard. I said, nope. He was miserable by the time we got done.
It's just, and then when they started winning, and I went. My brother and I took turns a lot of times to go to the games back then. My mom stopped going probably in 79 or 80. She stopped going to games. So, we took turns going and stuff like that. And I would get frustrated. I'd get mad and everything else. So, there were a lot of little low points during that time. And then I had some high points too. But for me personally, the lowest point, and I think I've told this story before, in 1992, the Saints-Eagles playoff game. Now, you would think, okay, that's a good time. The Saints went 12-4. It was a good season, very enjoyable season. But it was a low point for me because I felt like after that game, first off, it was the closest I ever came to wanting to take the life of another human being. Because if an Eagles fan would have talked shit to me that day, I probably would have killed him because that's how mad I was. Because I was my seats were in that same end zone where Reggie White sacks Bobby Hebert, where Bobby Hebert throws the interception right there at Gallen, and it comes right at me. I'm watching all this meltdown happen in front of us because we were up 20-7 going into the fourth quarter. This game's won. This game's over. Oh, no. You're not. The football gods just laughed at me. Oh, don't you remember what team you're watching? This is the Saints. No joy for you. You will suffer. and you will watch it happen in front of you, and you will be unable to stop it. And you will learn new profane words to describe Bobby Hebert, Stan Brock. You just start naming players, and that's how you would. Oh God! And my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend. That was the first game she went with me to a Saints game. I took her to that game.
And she went to another one after that with you?
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. Well, first off, she married me not long after that game, so that's one thing.
Well,
but we go to this game, and I was so angry because I felt like we will never ever win. That's the feeling you get, that you will never ever win. And winning 12 games in a season, winning the division title, all that stuff goes out the window. If you lose in the first round of the playoff, your season's ruined. So when these Falcon fans talk this shit about how, oh, well, losing the Super Bowl is no big deal. No, it is. Because you're lying if it's not.
Yeah. I mean, once you make the... Okay, I look at things differently than most people. The Saints, for the longest time, it was, okay, we need a winning season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got that. And then we need to make the playoffs. Okay, we check that off the list. Okay, we need to win a playoff game. Aaron Brooks. Okay. Well, then we have to advance in the playoffs. We get to the NFC Championship in Chicago. And after we lost to Chicago in the NFC Championship game, I can remember sitting by myself because I was absolutely lethal to anyone that crossed my path for the time being. I remember sitting by myself and thinking, that was it. We will never get to that point again. Mm-hmm. So you fast forward, 3 years to the Vikings in the Superdome, and the entire game. I mean, it's just back and forth and back and forth. Brett Favre is powering that drive down the field, and I'm thinking, I knew it. Chicago was the closest that we would ever get. Brett Favre throws that interception. I ran over my wife and at that point.
You ran over your wife?
Yeah, trying to get up off the bed where I was watching the game. And when Garrett Hartley kicks that field goal in overtime, I was like, oh my God. But, over the next 2 weeks between that NFC Championship game and that Super Bowl, I can remember sitting there at work when I had my alone time. I can remember sitting there thinking, if they lose the Super Bowl, none of this will ever mean as much as it does right now. Fortunately for us, things worked out, and they took care of business, and they won the game against all odds, against the absolute prototypical computer quarterback Peyton Manning. But, the only reason that we did that was because Peyton threw the game to his dad's old team. Yeah. And the only reason that we got to the Super Bowl was because the NFL felt sorry for us for Hurricane Katrina. I can't believe I actually gave that light of day on my program. Anyway.
That's a Hillary Clinton type of excuse there. Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I mean, but and I felt the same way after the Bears game because the playoff game, losing the playoff game, that was Jim Moore's best team in '92, and we lose that game. So I feel like we're never going to win a playoff game. You win one in 2000, you beat the Rams. Yeah, I was disappointed that we lost that game to the Vikings, but I also knew in the back of my mind, look, no Joe Horn, Ricky Williams was just coming off of a bad ankle sprain. We'll be back the next year to advance further. This team did a lot more than I ever expected them to do. So I was okay after the Vikings game because I really didn't expect them to win that game with in 2000, 2006, I felt the same way. I had to go outside and punch the shed because I was so mad at how badly we played against the Bears. And it was like I felt like that was our one chance, that the card just fell just right for us, and it's not going to be the same thing, because I didn't understand or really believe that the Saints, were building something. I felt like that was just one of those years where we got a lot of breaks, and that's why we got as far as we did. So, of course, in 2009, I'll be honest with you, in 2009, maybe I was just naive. I don't know. But at no point, now my wife was like you. My wife's like, this is it. She's watching the whole fourth quarter like this, hands in her face. She can't look at anything. And I'm like Sam Rutigliano, in the Browns highlight. I'm standing up, my hands. I'm standing up the whole time, bent over, my hands on my legs, going, come on, man, one time, make a play, one time. So I was expecting someone to make a play to keep the Vikings from kicking that field goal. I didn't expect it to be Tracy Porter. I just expected something to happen, just like the Washington game with the missed field goal, just like, just go through the games. The Miami Dolphins game where Darren Sharper makes the interception, starts to come back, the whole bit. I just felt like this was our time. We are not going to lose this game no matter what. And then when we get to the Super Bowl, I'm like, okay, I'm happy. We made the Super Bowl. We're no longer in the Animal House, fraternity house thing with Judge, the guy in the wheelchair who's blind, and Flounder and Pinto, all in that, one section. We're not those teams anymore. That's still the Browns, the Lions, the Texans. That's the teams that have never been to a Super Bowl. That's that group. And not in that group anymore. In fact, we're even better than that group, any other group, because we're in the winner's side. Minnesota and Buffalo can't even say that. They've been there 4 times. They can't do it. So, that win the Super Bowl, it's like, okay, nothing else matters anymore. We've done it. Even to just say, look, we so 2011 when we lose, 2010 when we get beat up with the and 2011 we lose the way we lost to the 49ers. I was upset, angry, like I was in 92 and in 2006, because we had done it. Now, years later, it bugs me more, because in 2011, that team was good enough to win another one, and we never got back. But at that moment, if you captured my emotions at that moment, I was like, no, I'm not angry. And even, the last year against the Vikings, I was upset, but not angry.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that team did more than I expected them to. Okay? They should have gone to the NFC Championship game. I don't think they would have beaten the Eagles. In fact, that butt's kicked by the Eagles because of the way the Eagles are playing. Not because the Eagles are that much better a team than we are, but they were at home. They wanted that Super Bowl. They were playing up the whole underdog role, and we were really beat up going into that game. And I don't think that team was ready yet. I think they got further than they should have, which is a good thing. But it's this year and next year. Now we have to take the step forward. Now we have to win that divisional round game. Now we have to win that championship and get back to the Super Bowl. I'm not the kind of guy who looks at a team anymore, the Saints anymore, as, okay, this is a last year that way anymore. Because we won that Super Bowl in 2009. because I want us to win another championship. But if my entire lifespan, and I can only say this because you had to put up with so much crap for the first 40-something years, but my entire lifespan now is satisfied because I've got that one championship, okay? Because that's one more championship than the Falcons have, and the Panthers have, championship than a lot of teams in the NFL, the Bills, the Vikings, have gone, and the Bengals, and never won, okay? So that's for me, that's something I can appreciate because I saw when we lost a game 40-6 because we only had 6 yards rushing. I saw games where we just totally melted down in the fourth quarter in the game that we have won, and we figured out. I saw a Big Ben, against the Falcons. I saw those games where it's like you feel like
Barkowski.
Yeah,
Billy
you
White
feel like
Johnson.
Well, I went to little Alfred Jenkins. That's who that ball was tipped up in the air, and Alfred Jenkins caught that and ran it in for a touchdown. I remember those things, because it's like natural disasters. You know where you were when this happened, and I don't have to deal with that anymore. That it's funny now to look back at it. Because now you can sit there and say, hey, it doesn't matter. We won. That was just the scar tissue I had to build up to appreciate the championship when it finally came.
Well, I look at things differently. Each step that you take, as I was talking about earlier, it's all progress is gauged in steps. And for the Saints, those steps were winning season, making the playoffs, winning a playoff. Well, the steps in that progression got bumped way up in 2009 because you won the Super Bowl. So I'm one of those people that now we've won a Super Bowl. Just getting to the playoffs is not an accomplishment for me. If you get to the wild card round of the playoffs and you lose, all you did was play one more week than everybody else. You didn't accomplish anything. Yes, you made the playoffs, and there were all these other teams that did not. But as a team, you really didn't accomplish anything. If it's got to be winning another Lombardi, or it's not a successful season. Now, saying that, going back and looking at last year, you've got to look at the expectation level going into the season, what it was for the New Orleans Saints. Nobody picked them any higher than, I believe, third in the NFC South going into the season, except me. I'm never going to let that go.
Yeah, except you. No, you should.
Nobody picked them to finish the season very well, and they wound up going on. I mean, you can never underestimate the value of that 8-week tear in mid-season that they went 8-0. There were a couple of games that the Atlanta game should have been won. That would have made it 13-3. Excuse me, 12-4.
Wait, what season?
Last year.
You talking about? Oh,
if we had swept Atlanta, that would have made it 12-4.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. I was kind of lost. I was trying to remember. I thought you were talking about 2009.
Oh no. The losses to Carolina and Tampa at the end of the season were inconsequential. Or wait a minute. I know one of them was Tampa. Who is the other?
You talking about in last year?
2009.
Or are you talking about in 2009? Dallas, Tampa, and Carolina. Yeah. Those are the last 3 losses.
The loss.
And Dallas is the only one that pissed me off because
we should have beat that team in double digits.
Yeah, we did not play as well as we should have, and against that. I mean, clearly, obviously, because we lost. I mean, we let Dallas get up on us early, and then we had to fight to come back, and it really shouldn't have happened that way. It was just one of those kind of games where I felt like, why, Saturday night in the Dome, we should have destroyed this team. Why did they pick that game to lay down like dogs, basically?
Yeah. And you can't underestimate how fired up Dallas was for that game either.
I know.
They really wanted to end that undefeated streak, and so they did. But as a consolation prize, we got the Lombardi Trophy, which coincidentally hasn't been in Dallas since the early '90s. But I'm seeing a Kermit Frog meme that sitting there sipping tea that says, "But that's none of my business." Anyway, it's not enough to have a winning record. It's not enough to win the division. It's not enough to make the playoffs. This team now, I believe, has the talent and has the ability to get there and to bring that trophy back home again. I really firmly believe that.
Well, and here's the thing too, and I totally agree with you on this. This is a team that now they've won that wild card game. They've won a division. Okay, so where do you go from here? Is this going to be another 2000 Saints team that you had this great season, and then this year it's not going to be as good? Or is it going to be this year that you advance past the divisional round? Because that's kind of where we've been stuck now. If you look at 2013 and 2017, those 3 seasons we've lost in divisional round of the playoffs. We have not. We played in the wild card round every year, those 3 years, but we've lost in the divisional round of the game. And the teams we lost to did not win at all. They lost in the championship game. When we lost in 2011, the 49ers lost in the championship game. We lost in 2013. The Seahawks won it all. You're right. Never mind. I'm thinking of a different year. I was thinking of the year before when I was thinking of 2012 when the 49ers went. And then this past year we lost to the Vikings, and they get their butts handed to them by the Eagles. So we have to. There's no satisfaction in saying, okay, well, you ended up losing to the world champs. No, this is the time now to you guys make that next step. And you get to the NFC Championship game, and you win that game and get back to the Super Bowl. Because the reason why Drew Brees is not getting the respect that I think fans think he deserves is because he only has that one Super Bowl win. And people feel like, yeah, you got that, but all right, you need to do it again. You get a lot of stats, but you're not in the playoffs every year. You're not in the NFC Championship game every year like Tom Brady is in the AFC Championship. You're not constantly winning games like the Packers are and so forth. So Breeze needs to get back to the Super Bowl. He needs that for his final piece of the resume. You can have all the records, but you've got to win one more championship so you can say you're a two-time winner.
Yeah, it's not, if you're considered an elite quarterback these days, it's not exceptional to have a Super Bowl win because that's expected of you to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, how many of these guys have 2 Super Bowl wins? Not many.
Yeah.
I guess we need to wind it down. We want to invite everyone back next Thursday. next Tuesday night at 8 p.m. We want you all to join us in celebration. I don't have my noisemaker or my whistle or streamers or any of the fireworks. I'm not prepared. But anyway, we want to invite you guys to join us next week. It's something that's very special for us. We are celebrating 2 years, 104 shows on the air. Did you ever think we'd make it this far?
How do you put up with me for this long? A lot of shoes come racing home things.
Well,
I'm enjoying it. I still have to tell. So as long as people don't get tired of hearing about my stories about being at St. What happened in old St. Scott, that's fun. I'm enjoying the heck out of this.
Love what we do. I love the interaction that we have with people. I love our following. You guys, you don't know how it brightens my day for you guys to message us and say, "Hey, loved your show." Nobody else talks about going to games in Old Tulane Stadium. Nobody else talks about the stuff that you guys talk about. You guys are different than everyone else that's on the air, and that means a lot to me. It really does. That is what we strive for, and that is what we wanted to create. And the only way that we were able to do that is thanks to you guys for, in Alan's words, for putting up with us for this long.
That's it. Absolutely.
And next week is our 2 years down, third year to start anniversary, which will actually be July 20th, but we're going to celebrate it on the 17th. No big deal. We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Once again, we thank our sponsors, Fan First Productions. We invite you guys to subscribe to our show on iTunes and on YouTube at Under the Dome. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome PO1. If you'll look on your link to the show tonight, at the bottom of the inscription is all of our Twitter handles. If you want to reach out to us individually, you can find us on Facebook at Under the Dome Podcast. We have a page set up for the show. Feel free to weigh in. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like. Please don't be hurtful, because my psyche is very, very fragile these days as I'm getting older. I'm
taking
I tried to say it with a straight face, but
Yeah, you can give me the abuse. I'm used to it. And also on our Facebook page, I've been doing who wore it better jersey numbers. Today was number 31. Deliberately picked these three players, Taylor and Jarius Byrd, because they all have something in common and for these guys, and they didn't produce for us. And then in the case of both Taylor and Glenn, a guy who was past the hill, and it's what these numbers have in common is more so than who wore it best, because none of them wore 31 very well. It was just not a good number. Tomorrow will be number 33.
Okay, you're going to do 33.
Yeah.
Eventually, you got to get to number 37. That's going to be Tommy Myers. That's going to be Steve Gleason.
Yep.
Did I make the cut on that draft?
No, you did not, because you didn't play for the Saints.
I worked for the Saints, man.
37 will be Tommy Myers, Mel Gray, Steve Gleason, and Steve Stonebreaker. And the reason why I'm including I'm including Steve Stonebreaker because I got to tell the story about the fight at Giant Stadium. That even John Meekum started throwing some punches, and and that when he got fined by the league, that became they renamed the Saints the fund to pay his fine from fans, the Enforcers Club, and it kind of evolved into the New Orleans Saints. which still exists today. That's the get to know you luncheon the Saints have at the end of training camp, where you get to meet the players and stuff like that. And they've been doing this now for 51 years this season. It's a neat story. So that's why Steve Stonebreaker's in the list. And of course, we all know the story with Steve Gleason. Tommy Myers, one of my all-time favorite Saints, the hardest hitting little safety you've ever seen.
I would love to get Tommy Myers on this show.
Oh, I would too, because he has to have some stories about those early days. Tommy Myers that was one of my favorite Saints players as a kid. He was the only defensive player who went to the Pro Bowl for the Saints throughout the entire 1970s. The only one. Tommy Myers. And Mel Gray is a good story because he was a kick returner. And, I get to talk a little bit about, I don't know if you remember Plan B. Do you remember Plan B in free agency? The first attempt by the NFL to have a free agency. And we lost Mel Gray to the Detroit Lions because they put him on Plan B. And it was really kind of a dumb thing to do because for the rest of the time of the Peter Moore years, we never had a good kick returner again after Mel Gray left. It's not until one of the guys I'm going to talk about tomorrow who wore 33, Ty Rives, that we get a good kick returner, one of the best ones in Saints history. It's going to be Michael Strawn. Yes, Michael Strawn, number 33 for the Saints. There's a good story with him. Tyrone Hughes, and he wore 33, but I'm going to pick 33 for him because, frankly, we have not had a lot of good number 32 players in that number entirely. If you look through the Saints history, think of a guy who wore number 32 for the Saints who was really an impact player. You can't think of any at all.
Jabari Greer.
Jabari Greer wore 32 and 33. He had 33 on. He was wearing 33 in 2009. He wore 32 after that season. So I'm putting him in 33. So I get to tell the Jabari Greer story.
Okay.
So that's how that works. Hey, even old Dalton Hilliard wore 40 at first and then went to 21. Well, I stuck with 21. It's what you did in that particular number. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They got some number. When we get to 40, that's not a good number. There's some horror stories to talk about with number 40.
Well, we invite you guys to join us next week on our anniversary show. We're going to have we've had to kind of redirect a little bit due to some scheduling conflicts. Next week, we're going to have Bob Rose and quite possibly a very special mystery guest. We're still waiting to verify on that, but as it stands right now, it's going to be the two of us and Bob, just like business as usual.
Absolutely.
And we also want to invite you guys to check out on the Canal Street Chronicles site, check out the Bayou Blitz with Bob Rose tomorrow night.
Absolutely. That's my boy.
Yes, he's like we're like proud parents every time Bob does something amazing. We try to take a little bit of credit for it.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.